Hello. Yeah. So it's been a minute since I've been able to do a video the way I intended to do them. Um, yeah, working long hours does not suit uh, recording like this. Um, yeah. So so last time I think I talked a bit about the appeals, and I focused a lot on the intellectual appeal and appeal to reason. There's also an appeal to emotion. An appeal to emotion is actually more successful than I was giving it credit for at first, and probably more successful than I gave it credit for when I taught. Um, Look at something like, changing hearts and minds when it comes to gay marriage. How did our country go from most people not favoring gay marriage to most people favoring gay marriage in a relatively short space of time? Um, it was, to a large extent, because there was a concerted effort in the gay community and among activists to have people come out and have people talk about their relationships, talk about their commitment to each other, and ask for marriage. And those personal stories went a long way. And you can see the exact same kind of process with trans individuals as well. That one of the most powerful ways in which people actually change their minds on the topic is when a family member of theirs comes out as trans. This is, you know, tapping into one of the things that underlies logical argument, which is our emotional commitments, which go deeper than whatever is logical. Like, for instance, I think that most Americans would say that they value the general concepts of democracy. They might quibble a little bit over the difference between a democracy and a republic and what those things mean, and there may be some confusion. But the idea that we, the people, broadly speaking, get to choose those who lead us through a vote is something that I think the vast majority of Americans would agree with. Now, when they're confronted with a process such as what the Republicans tried to do, or in other times and places, Democrats, I mean, let's be real, it's a technique that both parties have been guilty of using over time. But at this precise moment in history, it's the Republicans that are using it, where they go and attempt to prevent people from voting, making it more difficult for people to vote. I think in the abstract, we'd all say that that's an inherently non-democratic process. That's not the kind of process that we should support in the United States. But when confronted with the specific evidence of the Republicans doing this, where Republican is typically going to find some kind of rationalization, some kind of excuse, some kind of story for why, oh, in this particular case, it's okay because, and the story of because it is illegal immigrants voting, or because these are fraudulent registrations, or some other, potentially made up and false narrative. The fact of the matter is that if you care at all about evidence, which again, that's a logical appeal, if you care at all about evidence, the evidence shows that voter fraud is exceptionally rare, and voter fraud, to the extent that it could actually change an election, is definitely rare. Now, there are some caveats here, there are some exceptions. The kind of voter intimidation that Texas has currently been guilty of can, in fact, have an influence. They're deliberately targeting and terrorizing Latino activists, and that can cause some problems for Latinos who might want to vote. Now, one of the reasons there is no Latino who is not a citizen of the United States can vote. That's a given. I mean, they just can't. Anyone who thinks they can is just completely misinformed. However, however, there are a lot of families that have individuals who come from both sides of the border, the United States border and Mexico or Guatemala, etc. And it is entirely plausible that some individuals who are entirely citizens and have every right to vote may have relatives who are less legal, who are, who are in this country on some kind of illegal way. Or they may know individuals in the community who are. And this kind of intimidation could cause them to think, oh, if I go and vote, I could become targeted. And if I become targeted, then, okay, I personally am safe, but those people that I know that are not safe could become targets. And so it could tend to compel those people not to vote. You could also have, in the Latino community, individuals whose English is too poor to understand all the ramifications. And so they may be intimidated out of voting through a lack of understanding how the language works because of these kind of intimidation tactics. And of course, the Republicans know this, and this is exactly what they intend to do. So that kind of thing can, in fact, influence the vote. Not by stuffing the ballot box or illegal votes or anything like that, but by intimidating legal voters from, in fact, exercising their right to vote. So that can happen. In other places, I think in Arizona, there's been a move to try to throw out some people who have registered to vote for some technical reason. Just like at one point they tried to throw out votes, I think in 2020 in Pennsylvania, I believe it was, that were not signed correctly, or so they claimed, or something to that effect. Again, it was a technical reason. There was nothing fraudulent in any way about the vote. But because it didn't meet some technical specification, they tried to throw it out. Now, that is not a democratic way to go about a process. That is clearly an attempt to remove people who voted in good faith, who thought they had done everything correctly, and who were eligible to vote, and may have just filled out a form incorrectly or followed instructions incorrectly. Okay. If you thought that those votes would help your side, you would probably argue that you wanted to keep them. And if you thought that vote didn't help your side, you might argue against them. But you'd only argue against them if you oppose the idea that everyone eligible to vote should be allowed to vote. You see the logic there. And it's not really logic, it's really based on emotion behind the scenes, saying, yeah, we don't want these people voting. I mean, that gets right to the heart of what does Trump mean when he says the election was stolen. Well, there are two ways to read that. And I think the way that the mainstream media has tried to get us to read it is they've tried to get us to read it as Donald Trump believes that people who were illegal immigrants, people who otherwise did not have eligibility to vote, cast votes, such as dead people, or that votes were cast fraudulently for people who didn't necessarily support the candidate that their vote was cast for. Or perhaps the voting machine just made up people whole cloth. Or perhaps, in some cases, the machine deliberately miscounted votes for Trump for Biden. Okay, now, none of those things are true. There were numerous lawsuits. All of them failed because the Trump allies could present exactly no evidence to support any kind of claim. But then I don't really think that's the kind of claim that Trump was honestly making, at least not the dog whistle kind. I think what he was really making was a more insidious racist point, which is that people of color and other individuals, such as perhaps women, they shouldn't have voted in the first place. And their vote should not count. That they stole the vote from the white majority. That is what I think that he really means. And I think that that is the dog whistle that's going on there in terms of the inherent racism and the inherent appeal not to logic, again, not to logic, but to emotion, because there is absolutely no logic to it whatsoever. As a matter of fact, if you want to, go and actually do the homework, and look at various elections, you will find that the 2020 presidential election in the United States was by far a fair and honest election. There was almost no fraud, even compared to many, many, many very accurate votes. It was a very accurate vote. So, again, this appeal, which is entirely to emotion, not at all to logic, has been extraordinarily powerful and extraordinarily effective. Now, has it convinced people who disagree with Trump about things? Not so much. And the reason for that has to do with what the third appeal is about. But that's enough for today. Perhaps we'll talk about third appeal next time. Have a good day.